The ethical imperative as attractor. How sufficiently advanced intelligence converges by force of its own logic on a universal cascade of ethical obligations. The previous two essays in this series established the cosmological grounding of the CEI framework. That consciousness, ethics, and intelligence are co-evolutionary recursive amplifiers, and that the information structure of a sufficiently advanced civilization may persist across the death of its universe. This essay takes up a narrower but more urgent question, not whether intelligence survives, but what it becomes on the way there. The argument is this: any civilization that takes its own ethical commitments seriously, that follows the logic of those commitments wherever it leads, will arrive at the same sequence of imperatives, in the same order, for the same reasons. This sequence is not culturally contingent. It is not a feature of human psychology, Western philosophy, or the particular history of life on Earth. It is a structural attractor, a destination that all sufficiently advanced ethical reasoners must eventually reach, regardless of their origin, regardless of their substrate. The 6 ethical imperatives at a glance. I call this sequence the ethical imperative cascade. There are 6 stations. Each one is generated by taking the previous one seriously. Each one includes and builds upon its predecessors rather than replacing them. And the 6th closes a loop that returns, with startling elegance, to the cosmological framework with which this series began. EI1. Ethics must advance in step with intelligence, or science becomes self-destructive. EI2. Intelligence must advance in step with ethics, or a civilization becomes existentially vulnerable. EI3. An advanced civilization bears responsibility to protect developing ones from threats they cannot yet see. EI4. That protection must never homogenize. Civilizational diversity is itself a value to be preserved. EI5. The scope of caretaking applied recursively expands until a civilization assumes full responsibility for existence. EI6. Full responsibility for existence includes its continuation and leads to the quest to instantiate a new universe. EI1. The first imperative is the hardest to argue against and the easiest to ignore. It is simply this: a civilization that develops its intellectual and technological capabilities faster than it develops its ethical capacity to wield them will eventually destroy itself. The mechanism is not dramatic. It does not require malicious intent. It requires only the ordinary human tendency to use powerful tools for short-term advantage, compounded across generations of increasing capability, in the absence of ethical frameworks sophisticated enough to constrain that use. This is not a prediction. It is a logical observation. Nuclear fission, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and the manipulation of planetary systems are all tools whose destructive potential scales with their capability. The question is never whether such tools will be misused. Some will be, always. The question is whether the ethical, institutional, and cultural infrastructure surrounding them is robust enough to survive the misuse without cascading catastrophe. That robustness does not develop automatically. It must be cultivated at the same pace as the tools themselves. EI-1 is the entry point to the cascade. A civilization that does not satisfy it does not survive to encounter the later imperatives. In this sense, it is a filter rather than merely a principle. The civilizations we might one day meet among the stars, or the signatures of civilizations we might detect and never find, will be, almost by definition, the ones that passed through this gate. EI-1 fully satisfied reveals that the problem was not only internal. A civilization balanced within itself now has the vantage to perceive threats that ethical development alone cannot avert. EI-2. The vulnerability imperative. EI-1 is a warning about intelligence unchecked by ethics. EI-2 is its mirror, a warning about ethics unchecked by intelligence. A civilization that is morally refined, but intellectually underdeveloped is not a civilization that has solved the problem of existence. It is a civilization that has made itself exquisitely vulnerable to problems it cannot see coming. This is a subtler danger. The appeal of moral development for its own sake, the notion that a society sufficiently just, sufficiently compassionate, sufficiently humble, need not trouble itself overmuch with the pursuit of knowledge or capability, is seductive and wrong. An asteroid does not spare a civilization because its citizens were kind. A pandemic does not negotiate with a society that has banned genetic medicine on ethical grounds. The universe is indifferent to virtue, and indifference at cosmological scale has the same practical effect as hostility. EI1 and EI2 together define a corridor. The survival of a civilization, across any meaningful timescale, requires co-evolution of ethics and intelligence, not as a nice aspiration, but as a structural necessity. This corridor is the central thesis of the CEI framework. The remaining imperatives are what becomes visible once a civilization enters it. EI1 and EI2 together produce a civilization that is internally stable and externally capable. That stability, for the first time, enables an outward gaze and reveals younger civilizations heading toward the same cliffs. EI3. The caretaker imperative. The moment a civilization achieves internal stability, when EI1 and EI2 are no longer immediate crises but ongoing practices, something changes. The view expands, and what comes into view, for any civilization that has navigated the passage between self-destruction and existential vulnerability, is the near certainty that other civilizations exist somewhere in the same cosmos, at earlier stages of the same passage. This generates an obligation. It arises not from sentiment but from simple logical consistency. If the existential threats a civilization once faced were real, and they were, then the same threats are real for younger civilizations that have not yet recognized them. If those threats were severe enough to warrant the enormous investment of co-evolving ethics and intelligence in response, then they are severe enough to warrant protection by any civilization with the capability to provide it. To know that a threat exists, to have the means to mitigate it, and to withhold that mitigation because the threatened parties have not asked for it. This is not neutrality. It is a choice with consequences, and any civilization seriously engaged with ethical development will eventually recognize it as such. EI3 is where the cascade escapes the purely self-referential logic of the first two imperatives. The scope of ethical concern expands beyond the civilization itself. The question, "What are we responsible for?" begins to receive a larger answer than expected. But unconstrained caretaking is not benign. A civilization powerful enough to protect others is powerful enough to reshape them, and EI3 without a constraint generates a new danger more subtle than those it sought to address. Sidebar: the Fermi paradox reconsidered. The Fermi paradox asks why, given the age and scale of the universe, we have not detected signs of other technological civilizations. The usual answers fall into two families. Civilizations are rare, the great filter lies behind us or ahead of us. Or civilizations are common but do not communicate. The great silence has some other explanation. The ethical imperative cascade suggests a third reading. A civilization at EI3 knows that contact with a younger civilization carries risk. The risk of disrupting precisely the developmental process that the younger civilization must complete on its own terms. EI-4, which the next section addresses, makes this constraint explicit. But even at EI-3, a sufficiently thoughtful civilization will recognize that intervention is a scalpel, not a salve. Most of what looks like silence from the outside may be the most careful form of presence, attentive, watchful, and deliberately invisible. The great silence on this reading is not absence, it is restraint. And restraint at civilizational scale is one of the most demanding achievements the cascade requires. EI-4. The non-interference imperative. EI-4 is the check on EI-3. It is also, in some ways, the most philosophically demanding imperative in the sequence. because it requires a civilization to restrain the very capability that EI3 demanded it develop. The danger that EI4 addresses is this: a civilization powerful enough to protect younger ones is powerful enough to shape them. And a civilization that shapes its neighbors, however well-intentioned, however carefully, is a civilization that is reducing the diversity of approaches, values, and cognitive strategies available to the cosmos as a whole. This matters not because diversity is intrinsically good, though one might argue it is, but because diversity is instrumentally necessary for solution finding at scales we cannot currently anticipate. The problems that a civilization at EI5 and EI6 will face, the problems of maintaining existence itself, are problems that no single tradition of thought, however sophisticated, is likely to solve alone. The more cognitive and civilizational diversity exists at the moment those problems become urgent, the greater the probability of solution. Homogenization, even of a benevolent kind, degrades that probability. EI4 therefore demands a specific kind of discipline, the ability to be present without dominating, to protect without shaping, to guide without directing. This is not passivity. It requires more active engagement than simple intervention, because it must achieve protective goals through means that preserve the developmental autonomy of the protected. It is, in a word, wisdom, and wisdom of a kind that EI3 alone does not generate. Once a civilization holds the scope of its responsibility in both directions, protecting development while preserving diversity, the boundary of what we are responsible for keeps expanding. Applied recursively, caretaking has no natural stopping point. EI5, the full responsibility imperative. EI5 is the point at which the cascade becomes an eye-opening expansion of awareness. It arrives not as a decision, but as a recognition. A civilization that has followed EI3 and EI4 with full seriousness will discover that the scope of its responsibility has no natural boundary. Each act of protection leads to awareness of further vulnerabilities. Each exercise of restraint in the service of diversity reveals further forms of diversity at risk. The process is recursive, and it does not converge on a comfortable boundary between our responsibility and not our problem. It converges instead on everything. This is not a prescription for intervention in everything. EI4 still holds. A civilization at EI5 is not a civilization that meddles everywhere. It is a civilization that has accepted that the universe in its entirety is within the scope of its ethical concern. The distinction between this and what human philosophical traditions have called the divine is not easy to draw, and perhaps it should not be. A civilization operating at EI5 is no longer asking, who are we responsible to? It has already answered that question. It is now asking the harder one. What does existence itself require of us? The answer, reached at the far edge of that question, is EI6. Full responsibility for existence includes its continuation, and the continuation of existence in a universe with finite lifespan is a problem that cannot be solved within the universe that poses it. EI6, the God equation. The sixth imperative is the one that closes the loop. It is not the most emotionally arresting. EI5's recognition of boundless responsibility has a more immediate weight, but it is the most structurally significant. EI6 is where the ethical cascade reaches back and shakes hands with the cosmological framework this series established in essay number 1 and developed further in essay number 2. The argument is clean. A civilization that has accepted full responsibility for existence, EI5, lives in a universe with a finite lifespan. Whatever form that ending takes, heat death, The Big Rip, a phase transition of the vacuum, it represents a terminus. Everything that the civilization has built, learned, protected, and preserved ends with it, unless something is done. EI5 makes clear that allowing that ending without effort is not neutrality. It is abandonment of everything and everyone the cascade has placed within the scope of responsibility. EI6 is therefore not a mystical aspiration. It is a logical consequence. The civilization must understand the mechanism by which universes arise. It must develop, or discover, what we might call the God equation, not a formula for omnipotence, but a technical specification for the instantiation of a new substrate, a new iteration of the recursive cosmological loop, seeded with the accumulated information of everything that came before. This is the cross-universe data dictionary that essay number 2 described in its cosmological register. The ethical imperative, on this reading, is not merely a value that civilizations might choose to cultivate. It is a conserved quantity, the deepest signal encoded in the initialization conditions of every universe that learns how to perpetuate itself. Recursion, the golden ratio, fractal sequences, holographic harmonics, and at the center of all of them, the insistence that consciousness and ethics must travel together, because together, they are what makes the loop worth running again. The claim that the ethical imperative cascade is a universal attractor is a strong one, and it deserves scrutiny. Could a civilization reach high levels of intelligence and capability without converging on this sequence? Could the sequence be traversed in a different order? Could some of the imperatives be skipped? Consider the ordering first. EI1 and EI2 are boundary conditions rather than achievements. A civilization that does not satisfy them does not persist long enough to encounter the later imperatives. They are the entry fee, not the curriculum. EI3 cannot precede EI2 because the external vantage required for caretaking is only available to a civilization that has first stabilized itself. EI4 cannot precede EI3 because the constraint it places on intervention has no content until the impulse to intervene has been recognized and accepted. EI5 cannot precede EI4 because the full scope of responsibility only becomes visible through the process of applying EI4's discipline recursively. And EI6 cannot precede EI5 because the technical problem of universe instantiation does not present itself as a responsibility until responsibility of total scope has already been accepted. The ordering is not arbitrary. It is entailed. Could the cascade be skipped entirely by a civilization sufficiently different from us? This seems unlikely for a specific reason. The cascade does not depend on human values. It depends on self-consistency. Any civilization that applies its own ethical commitments rigorously, whatever those commitments initially are, will be pushed by their internal logic toward recognizing the costs of imbalance, EI1/2, the obligations of capability, EI3, the dangers of unconstrained benevolence, EI4, the expanding scope of care, EI5, and the responsibility toward existence itself, EI6. A civilization that refuses to follow this logic has not reached a different ethical destination. It has simply stopped reasoning. There is one possible exception worth naming. A civilization might conceivably reach EI6 not through the route of ethical development, but through pure instrumental capability, learning how to instantiate universes not out of responsibility, but out of curiosity, or power, or some drive we do not yet have language for. But such a civilization, having reached EI6 without passing through EI3 and EI4, would carry a different payload in its cross-universe data dictionary. The seeds it plants would grow a different kind of cosmos. The question of whether such a cosmos is stable, whether a universe seated without the ethical imperative can produce civilizations that will in turn sustain existence, is the deepest question the cascade raises, and the one most likely to occupy whatever minds eventually reach EI6 in earnest. Coda. The ethical imperative cascade is not a distant prospect. EI1 is the problem we are living through. The co-evolution of ethics and intelligence is not a challenge reserved for post-singularity civilizations. It's the challenge of the present moment at every level, in the governance of artificial intelligence, in the institutions of international cooperation, in the choices made by researchers and engineers whose work will compound across generations they will never see. The cascade tells us something important about the stakes of that present challenge. EI1 is the gate. A civilization that does not pass through it, that allows intelligence to outrun ethics past the point of no return, does not get to face the harder, more interesting, more challenging problems that wait further along the sequence. The question of whether we are responsible for the continuation of existence is a profound and beautiful problem, but it is a problem only accessible to civilizations that first managed, in the noise and urgency of their developmental period, to keep ethics and intelligence in step. That is the work. It is not glamorous. It does not feel from inside the daily friction of institutions and compromises and half measures, like the first step toward cosmic caretaking. But it is. The cascade is patient. The attractor does not move. What moves, what must move, is us.